What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 19 of Ask a Programmer Live with Ryan. Today, a guy who is starting to look vaguely like some kind of Orthodox Russian monk is going to be doing an AMA-style live stream. So hopefully that will be entertaining. I'm just going to ramble for a little bit because I'd like a few people to join before I get into the interesting announcements, which I'll be sharing momentarily. But yeah, for today's episode, my plan is to just do Q&A. And there's a couple reasons for that. But every now and again, so typically what I do is, sorry, I'm moving my microphone around by accident. Typically what I do is I try to open these lessons with some kind of, what's up the Apache, some kind of lesson or something like that. And then every now and again I either run into a life situation where I don't have time to prepare a lesson. Sometimes I can make lessons up off the top of my head, but only on topics that I am familiar with. And so I thought today I'm just going to focus on questions, and we're going to do an AMA style stream, which generally speaking most people don't care to hear my opinion on anything outside of programming. So you can still ask me questions about programming. Not a problem. You can still ask me, what is the best architecture? Isn't MVVM the best architecture? What's up, Coding Cosmos? Oh, I'd be happy to answer that question. That's a favorite topic of mine. So just give me a minute. I've got a few announcements, but that's a good question, and that's a good name. I like that. Coding Cosmos. I was a huge fan of Carl Sagan's Cosmos. I'm not sure if that's the inspiration for your name, but huge fan of that show. It made my childhood. Anyways, I'm jacked up on coffee. What's up, Jose and Cybershark? All right, I think that is a sufficient number of people to begin the show. So let me just get through some announcements and then we'll just go straight into Q&A. But you know me, I like to ramble. It's probably, why some people tune into this show. So let's get started. So I have a couple of announcements to make. I just have to check the description box of this live stream to remember what they are. All right, so announcement number one, item number one, that's not a one, that's an exclamation mark, is that I will, I can't type, be away. Let me just adjust my, here we go with the WordPad. You know me, I only use the latest and greatest software and production values for this show. I mean, look at the lighting in here. Doesn't it look like I'm a pale ghost or something? I will be away between March 22nd and April 2nd. So I will be out in another province for, having a little bit of fun. Anyways, I won't elaborate. But, hey, what's up, Corbena? During that period, I'm not going to have a stable internet connection, or at least not one that's sufficient for streaming. So between those dates, I don't know how many Sundays that is, but I'm not going to be streaming during those particular dates. So that's the first announcement. When I get back, I will of course be back to regular live streams. I'm not going to take a long hiatus. I'm going to be traveling and I literally can't, well, I'll see how good my internet connection will be where I am, but most likely I won't be live streaming then. But I will be back the next Sunday after April 2nd. Let's just check on what that is, because okay, so I should be back April 4th. I think that means I'm only skipping one Sunday. Holy crap, we have Gabor here. That's pretty crazy. Thanks for joining me. Yeah. So it looks like I'll only be missing the 28th, and then I'll be back live streaming after then. Item number 2 before we get into Q&A. I am going to be doing that's a tough word to spell. Curriculum I'm going to be doing curriculum building / video plan. Oh, I can't type today. Video plans. Sorry, I only just had some coffee, so it hasn't quite worked its way into my bloodstream sufficiently. I'm going to be doing curriculum building / video plans for a Android / Kotlin / Compose course. It's probably mostly going to be on front-end stuff because most of my courseware is on object-oriented and functional software design and architecture and best practices and stuff like that. And that's not very popular stuff. Most people want to know how do I make a button in Android. So I'll go a little more complicated than that. But yeah. So that's item number 2. And then item number 3 is an interesting one. So I will be reaching out to some people, maybe even some people who are in the chat right now, no pressure, if they would like to join me for a live stream, Q&A, or some kind of interview podcast thing. I realize for some people doing live is uncomfortable. So I have a bit of an unfair advantage. My first live stream, I think, was in 2017. I have literally spent hundreds of hours talking to a webcam, knowing that whatever I say is going to be on the internet forever, and all the mistakes that I make there's going to be a huge record of that. So I realize some people are not as comfortable looking like an idiot as I am live. So I'd also be interested in talking to some people in a non-live format so that unlike, if I make a mistake while I'm talking now, I have to just roll with it because we're live. Because if I start freaking out, then the show sucks. But maybe for some people they would prefer a format which is more recorded, and if you screw something up, you can take another try at it, and that's cool. So we'll see. Anyways, I have no idea if anyone's even interested in talking to me, but that is a thing I would like to explore next month. So that is it for my announcements for now. So just really quickly, I won't be streaming April 28th, I think is the next Sunday. Yes, I will not be streaming April 28th, but I will be back for April 4th. And I'm actually pretty happy that I'm only missing one Sunday there. I am going to be building a Kotlin Compose Android front-end focused course. Excuse me. And people who are watching this who might be interested in coming on the channel and having a dialogue or doing Q&A or something like that, I'm open to suggestions. But I will be reaching out to some specific people. I won't put anyone on the spot because could be pretty awkward if I put someone on the spot and they don't want to go on the show. So that's cool. So that's basically it, and we can get straight into Q&A. And I will start with the first question. Also, thank you to Cybershark. I will enjoy this vacation very much. I'm a little burnt out at the moment. I'm not sure if you guys can see the dark circles under my eyes, but we're getting there. So Ryan needs a little break. So let's see. Ooh, the Apache is bringing the flame. Calling me out. Okay, so Carl Sagan's Cosmos asks, oops. Hi, I'm going to learn dependency injection first time in Android, so I'm confused between Coin and Dagger and Hilt. What should I learn? I am in second year. So I would like to ask you a question, Cosmos, which is that are you clear on what dependency injection means in like a specific, like what does that actually mean in non-technical terms? And if you're not clear on that, that's okay. It's one of the most poorly explained concepts out there because it's actually really, really simple. It's just some people thought they would use really big scary words like dependency injection. That sounds terrifying. That sounds like a injection, you know. So that's my first question before I answer this question of yours. Sorry, I've had a lot of coffee, so I'm kind of jittery. So what do you already know about that concept? Because if you know the basic idea, then, you know what? I'm just going to, I'll still see what your answer is, but I think I'm just going to start from the beginning. So dependency injection and the service locator pattern are two different ways. Okay, you do know the basics, all right? I'm just going to try and get everyone up to speed, and then we'll go into some specifics. Dependency injection and the service locator pattern are two different ways to achieve a principle called, what is it? This is why I'm so great with jargon terms. Inversion of control? I think it's, let me just double check that I have the right jargon term. Inversion of control. Or am I mixing that up? It is inversion of control, right? I don't actually care about the jargon term. I'm having a Richard Feynman moment. Martin Fowler. I just want to make sure I have the right jargon term. Yes, it is. Yes, it is inversion of control. Sorry. I just wanted to get that out. So dependency injection and the service locator pattern are two different ways to achieve a principle called inversion of control. Now, me explaining this does not actually help anyone, because all I've actually done is given you another jargon term. So let me translate what inversion of control means, but I want you to understand dependency injection, service locator, and probably some other things are ways to achieve inversion of control. Let's give that a better name. Let's call that, I'll give you Martin Fowler's definition. I'll paraphrase it. Inversion, IOC, let's call it that, is the principle of separating configuration from use. So this is basically a Martin Fowler who if you want to learn about a lot of stuff, good program design, Martin Fowler is the king. Let me give you my definition. Things that use things should not build the things they use, is my working class, lower middle income bracket explanation. Things that use things should not also build those things. So hopefully everyone can keep that in their mind, and then I'm going to get into, let's just look at something. Let's do build logic. So just to demystify things for everybody, different IOC containers, such as coin or dagger let's just say dagger / hilt, generally employ a service locator in their back end. I know Dagger didn't used to, but I feel like Jake Wharton said that it now does have some kind of a service locator. And as far as I'm aware, and for the senior devs listening, if I'm wrong about this, please do correct me, because I'm not trying to mislead people. But I'm quite sure that coin is effectively kind of like just a big service locator. And obviously it's got like the annotations and stuff like that. So IOC containers such as coin and dagger hilt generally employ a service locator in their backend. Now, what I want to point out for everyone watching is something really important. And the reason why I'm going to focus on this is you've mentioned that you're studying things and you want to learn. I know you said you're already clear on dependency injection, Cosmos, the principle, but I just want to try and get everyone up to the same speed. This code right here, so let me show you where this thing is called. Let's go to active game activity. So this top-level function, build active game logic, is called in this activity. And if you want to grill me about why I'm using an activity with compose, you can. That's a separate topic. So what I do here is I have a logic class, which is effectively a presenter, a presentation logic. And in order to build it, I need to wire a bunch of stuff up. I need to pass in the activity because the activity functions as a container. That's how the logic class talks to it. It doesn't talk to it very much, but sometimes. I need to get wired up to the view model, and I also need application context. When I jump into this class, we see those things here. So I use the context to create the backend stuff, or like if I had Android system services, I would use it there. Careful not to hold on to it, because you got to be a little careful with context. You have to know what you're doing, otherwise you can get memory leaks. And I write so I call this build logic. This is a term I use because I personally, to me, what a IOC container or a dependency injection library does is it basically is a container for build logic. So build logic is the logic required to wire things together, to build things, essentially. So I have this little class. So the reason why I'm kind of harping on this and not talking too much about coin and dagger, and hilt, well, there's two reasons for that. The first reason is that for someone who's learning the principles, I strongly suggest you write your own basic dependency injection logic for two reasons. Number one, in a small application, if that's what you're building, you do not need dagger 2. Or, I mean, I guess hilt or coin, you know, if you're really used to using them and it makes it a little easier, you can use them. Or if you want to learn how to use those things in a demo project, that's a fine reason. But in a small application, you don't need to do that. And I think even if you plan to do that later on, it's useful to understand that this is basically what these things do for you. The dagger stands for, or the DAG in dagger comes from a directed acyclical graph of dependencies. So dagger will build a graph, which is a data structure of the dependencies, and then you just slap a bunch of annotations here and there and modules and components and whatever. I haven't actually used hilt yet, so I'm probably pissing some people off. Hopefully it's simpler than it used to be. But you set these annotations and these modules and components up, and after about 73 compile time failures, eventually everything wires up together. And it basically, what I'm trying to say is these libraries will handle writing this code for you, but it comes at a cost. You have to set up all the different, you have to configure them before they can solve the problems for you. With some libraries, you have to configure things a lot less, but there's reasons in the back end why that can cause problems. And then for some libraries like Dagger, you have to configure it a lot, but it works very well in large-scale projects. So I finally get to your question. I'm sure Cosmos is thinking, won't this guy just answer my question? So my general opinion on these two things, I suggest you learn dagger/hilt. And the reason why is that, as far as I'm aware, I haven't actually used hilt. So again, people correct me if I'm wrong. But in comparison with coin and dagger, you have to understand Dagger was originally built by Square, which had like Jesse Wilson and Jake Wharton. And then it got like it was original, Dagger 1 was like Google or something. And then Dagger 2 became a Square library. And then now Dagger Hilt is like a Google library. It's built by some of the best software engineers and framework developers literally on the planet. So for that reason alone, I personally would pick Dagger Hilt over coin or coding or whatever else. Now, it is important to mention, though, I don't actually suggest people use Dagger in small projects unless they're learning Dagger. Because like I say, It it's good to feel comfortable, especially if you want to get hired, learning some basics about what these magical libraries do. So that's basically my answer. I can't give you like a big comparison of the two. I can just suggest that you learn Dagger Hilt, but also make sure that you are clear on what both of these things are doing, because it's a really simple principle. Things that use things shouldn't build the things they use. So just to give a really practical example, I have this logic class which uses the container, the view model, the backend stuff, this dispatcher provider. It shouldn't also build them. And that's its own discussion, but yeah, that is my suggestion for everyone. All right, let's move on. So, holy crap. I'll have to try and be a little faster with these questions. Jose asks, did you work with server-sent events? Which tool did you use? I think Retrofit didn't support it. I don't have a ton of experience with HTTP and REST, if that's what you're speaking of specifically. Like, I've built some REST APIs. So I don't think I can really give you a great answer there. Server-sent events. So really the two tools I've used is Retrofit, and then I also used like To The Metal, what was it called? I think HTTP URL stream. This is going back like a year and a half, so it's not very fresh in my mind, but just like a low level, not low level, but like a Java standard library approach. I can't answer your question well, but as a related tangent, I want to actually build a NDK HTTP, what would you call that, REST parser, HTTP parser application, and then do a tutorial on that, because I actually want to learn how to work with sockets, which is like pretty much the lowest level API for setting up web or network communication. Anyways, I'm going to move on to more questions, because looks like there's a few. So Saeed asks, who can make professional custom views? I wouldn't say that's my specialty. I've made custom views before. Yeah, like in my day planner application. I don't know, if you really want me to show you an example of that, let me know. I'm tempted to move along to another question. But Saeed, I can show you how to do it if you'd like. I wouldn't say I'm great at it, though. I'm definitely more of like a back-end software architecture type. Front-end, I'm good at it, but it's not my specialty, is what I'm trying to say. All right, so the Apache. Oh, here, sorry, I skipped a question. All right, hashtag way2 says, should we start moving towards Compose even though it's still in early stages? So just so everyone has the clear information, so Compose is in beta, and they are apparently, this is what I was told, aiming for start of next year for a stable release, but obviously it's it's software, so who knows. I personally would rather they do, they're comfortable instead of trying to hit an arbitrary deadline, but that would be nice. All right. So Compose is in beta. Really, here's my answer for this way too. So if your work is planning to adopt Compose, then I think it makes sense to start learning it. One thing, so this is coming from the Android Developers Backstage podcast. What they said there is that with the beta, even though it's not stable, they tried to make it as stable as possible. I'm not sure if you can hear, but there's some Canada geese flying over in the background. They sound awful. They make this horrible honking noise. Anyways, so they tried to make the current beta as stable as possible, but again, it's still beta. If you're planning to adopt Compose, if your work is planning to adopt Compose, I think it makes sense to start learning it. If you have time for side projects, I do suggest learning it because it is super cool. I friggin' love Compose. It annoys me sometimes, and like everyone has been criticizing, design time preview is terrible right now. So there's definitely some problems they need to work out with it, but I really like it. This application here was written, the UI was written entirely in Compose, and it is so much nicer to do this stuff instead of writing XML. Now I realize some people like XML, and you know what? Good for you. I personally love Kotlin. It's my favorite programming language. So to be able to do all of this stuff in Kotlin Compose, like look at how easy it is to swap loading screens and stuff like that. You know, I just set up a remembered state variable thingy here, and then I update that from the view model after the data is loaded, and then I have a loading screen and the content screen, and it animates them in and out of view. And that's just like basic animation. That's kindergarten level. So I really like Compose. And then, yeah, those are sort of the two main things. I do suggest it. If you're personally interested in it, it's great. If your work isn't planning to adopt it, probably wait until, you know, the stable release. It's hard to give you a certain answer because it depends on what's important to you. All right. The Apache is bringing down the... he's calling me out. By the way, check out the Apache's YouTube channel. I see there are some videos popping up on there. Oh, I wanted to ask you, whatever your name is. Oops, that's... I don't know why I pasted that twice. What is your IntelliJ theme? Because I quite liked it. So the Apache asks, my first question, why are you not active in Slack channel? Well, that's actually not true. I am active in the Slack channel. I'm just pretty, you know, inconsistent with it. I do try to be as active as I can, but as I've confided in everyone before, I am really bad at multitasking. So I do my best to be active on Twitter, and I do check Slack. It's just I don't have Slack on my phone, for example, so I don't get notifications. So I am on there. We do have a Slack channel. If people would like to join, I can grab the invite link. It's open to everybody. We just have one rule. Don't be an a-hole. I used to say the whole word, but otherwise YouTube will demonetize me. But yeah, come and join us. And I am active on there just periodically. Okay. Raviraj. Raviraj asks, I'm done working in office and I want to completely move into remote. Does Android Dev help me to get this complete remote job? What are your thoughts? You know, it's a bit too general of a question for me to get really specific here. I do see a fair number of remote Android developer jobs, and I think as far as remote jobs and software development jobs are concerned, that's probably one of the easier ways to get remote work. I don't really know where to go with this question, though. In short, yes. But there's lots of other ways. Like I know people working remotely as web developers. I'm sure there's iOS developers. I think Android has a very large ecosystem, and there are like billions, literally, of active Android device users. So Android's probably a good, safe choice. But I don't want to say that and then tell you you can't do iOS or web or whatever. But I'm not really sure where else to go with that question. So I think good luck. It's not going to be easy because there's high competition, but if you're good at what you do and you have a good portfolio, then you have a good chance of getting hired. Mr. Doge. I still want those coins. I'll give you some biscuits if you give me some coins. Okay, the Doge asks, "Hey Ryan, I have an interview for a junior Android developer on Tuesday. What do you think are the best resources to prepare for it?" Wow, you've got it on Tuesday. So first thing, don't cram the day of the interview. Just focus on relaxing and be okay with failing, because we've all failed lots of interviews. Nobody's perfect, so the day of the interview, just relax, like take a walk, put on some nice music, light some candles, take a hot bath. No, I'm just kidding there, but just focus on relaxing and just be okay. Now to answer specifically, one thing you could, it's difficult to answer this one too, and the reason why is that I've been through a lot of different Android interviews, probably about 4 or 5 at junior level. The questions you will be asked depend on the interviewer. So some interviewers, let me do it this way. Some interviewers will ask you basic software engineering questions, like how to implement a linked list, for example. Some will only ask, how can I explain this? Pre-made Android questions from a website, so some won't pay any attention. What's another thing that I've been through? Some will ask you to describe / write UML for a project, although that's probably a little advanced for a junior developer, but I have had that happen. So what I'm trying to say here, I'm not trying to scare you. It's really difficult to say for sure. From my resources, check out 2 videos. So one of the videos is called how to, I think it's called like skills required to be a job-ready Android developer. And then I have a practice interview with answer key. I would suggest for my resources, look at my practice interview, because I cover really basic software engineering stuff, which you might not be expected to know, or they might want to know. I did this one interview for a junior Android developer, and basically the only things they asked me, apart from like maybe questions about the Android lifecycle, they asked me a whole bunch of data structures and algorithms questions. And because I was, I'm a self-taught developer and I didn't even know what software engineering was, I failed really hard, and that one really surprised me. So it depends. I don't think they'll do that to you. Don't get me wrong, but it's possible. Check out, don't look at the live stream. I cut my practice interview. Originally it was a live stream, but I cut it into 2 videos, which is more streamlined. So I would suggest checking those videos out. As far as other resources, I'm not really sure. If you do want to practice software engineering type stuff, you could look at, I used InterviewBit in the past. I'm not sure if it's still called that, honestly. But I don't actually suggest you cram on these questions, because it takes a while to learn software engineering, and I don't know if you're aware of that topic at all. Really, this is my personal suggestion. In my practice interview, I cover core Android, basic concurrency, which there's a good chance you'll get asked about that. If they ask you about async task, then tell them that it's deprecated. Pro tip. Basic DS and algos, so that fits under software engineering. And then behavioral / team dynamics. So I put a lot of effort into picking those questions. This is my best suggestion, but that doesn't mean you're going to get questions about that. So hopefully that helps. Okay, I'm slowly working my way to the bottom of the chat here. Socket server for an app, not a chat app though, says Jantu. Yeah, as a learning project. Yep. The Apache says, I think Daggerhilt is not a service locator, but Coin definitely is. I remember hearing Jake, or no, it was on a Reddit. Jake Wharton had responded to a Reddit thread on Coin or Codeine or something like that. And he mentioned that Dagger 2, I think in recent versions, admittedly, I read this like 2 or 3 years ago, did actually have did employ a service locator, but I don't think it's that important. But yeah, it's a definite maybe. What's up, Nikhil? Oh, cool. Okay. So thank you, Gabor. So Gabor says Hilt auto-generates components with predefined scope hierarchy and auto-injects activities / fragments annotated with Android entry point using those predefined components. That sounds a lot nicer than Dagger 2, so I'll have to at some point take a second look at that. Yeah, so this is an important point that Apache brings up here. So the service locator pattern of accessing dependency is also called dependency injection, which is not right. This is an important thing. Like, this topic is so confused. And the word that all of these things, the superclass of these words, inversion of control, doesn't actually give you much hint at all about what it does. So this is why I really put in a lot of effort to translate these things into something that makes sense. Because I spent like 2 years being confused about what the hell dependency injection actually was. And when it finally occurred to me, it was like, wow, so this is basically just different ways of doing this thing here. Separating configuration from use. Okay. I unfortunately don't know how to pronounce your name, my friend, so I'm going to call you Francisco. I'm guessing that is a Brazilian or Portuguese name. Francisco says, what advice do you have for someone who's having trouble learning Android dev? I've learned core Kotlin already, but some concepts on the Android Google Udacity course are going a bit over my head. Let me give you kind of the general advice I give to people for programming. For learning programming. So focus on a project-based learning approach and guide that process with code labs / courses, but more importantly, working source code. Now, if you're a sort of a more beginner / junior level programmer, like if you don't have a lot of experience in programming in general, it's okay to go with more code labs and courses. But this is a really important part here. So let me tell you a story from my personal journey. I started Android in June 2014, and I had like a little bit of practice with Java. I'd built like a Hello World Java EE application, and I had like a basic understanding of Java. But I didn't know how to code, like design programs or anything like that. The one thing I did right in the beginning is I said to myself, okay, I'm going to build an app that I want to build. So I built a workout logging application. It took me about 3 months to do that, and it was terrible. It was like, the whole thing was like, I don't know, 2 God activities full of like 6 fragments, and I had to end up rebuilding it several more times because every time I would build it, it was so terribly designed because I didn't know how to design things well, that I quickly figured out that I would have to just rebuild it from scratch just to add like 1 new feature. So for all those people who think software architecture doesn't matter, I think you should probably try building God activities and giant functions and see how well that works for you. Not to say you should get carried away with software architecture, but there's some basic principles like separation of concerns or modularity, which I think everyone should be doing. So the result of doing that was 2 things. I built some crappy applications, but I practiced the skill of writing code and solving problems and learning on the fly, but more importantly, practiced the skill of writing code and got used to doing that as much as I could. And that was very, very useful. So I advocate for everyone, although it depends a bit on your learning style, follow a project-based learning approach. So it's okay to have your code labs and courses and tutorials. Those are useful, but start with, and I'll give instructions for like beginner, then junior, then more intermediate. Beginners. Okay, build a calculator. Build a calculator. And find a project. Just give me 1 moment. Find a project. It really doesn't have to be this one, but find a project like my Kotlin MVP calculator. I wrote this application like 3 years ago, 4 years ago almost, to learn Kotlin. And the reason why I did this is because I was already okay at Java, but I wanted to learn the basics of the Kotlin programming language. And the best way I knew how to do that was to build a calculator. So write a simple app. The most important thing, write code. It took me 3 weeks to build this calculator in Kotlin, and by the end of that 3 weeks, I was comfortable writing Kotlin. So it only took me 3 weeks to be used to that language. I wasn't doing everything optimally, and I'm not even really, be careful because some of the dependencies in this app might be crappy. But that's really what I suggest you do, is follow a project-based learning approach. Start with something very simple like a calculator. And the reason why is that what I did wrong in the beginning is I took a somewhat complicated app, and then I was trying to learn that as well as the language and the platform at the same time. That's why I suggest people start with a calculator. It's easy. So don't, like, it's easy to build a calculator, and then by building an easy application in terms of its problem domain is the technical term, you can focus on learning the language and the design and the platform type stuff. Once you get through there, build either a note-taking app, so we'll say like a junior level. Build either a note-taking app or like a GitHub REST parser. So in other words, we're building still a pretty simple app, but it's either going to store data on the phone or it's going to fetch data from a web application. That's what this jargon means. REST is a way of asking a web application, something through the internet, for data. And then we'll say junior/intermediate. It really depends on how fast of a learner and how hard you work. Build an app you want to build. And this is where you need to get creative. Think of something you want to build and use. I chose a workout logging application because I liked working out and still do at the time. So I knew I would use it, and I knew I would be thinking, how can I improve this as a user? And as I would do that, I would add new features and stuff like that. So the final pro tip here, put these things on GitHub. Because you can use these apps you build as a resume. It's like your code resume. It's good. It's fine to have courses and certifications, but the code doesn't lie. So this is my primary advice, my friend. Hopefully that's useful for you. Focus on a project-based learning approach. So that means really, let me just break that down and then we'll move on. Project-based approach. Focus on writing code and building projects first. Use open source code projects, whatever code labs, courses, tutorials to guide you. Or if you can find a good code along tutorial, that's reasonable as well. I like to do my own thing, so that's more my thing. The other approach is what I call the laundry list approach. So this approach is this is what they teach you. Let's call this the traditional education approach. So they give you a list of 500 topics to learn and memorize in isolation, and by the end you don't have a working application, just 500 little code snippets. This is what we get encouraged a lot, depending on the teacher in traditional education, and this just, for me, does not work at all. So yeah, that's my suggestion, and I will move on. Okay. Let's see. You're very welcome. Oh, this, I can, let me, I'm not sure if this is really a question or just a comment, but I can, I want to talk about it just real briefly here. Masum had a couple of comments. I recently gave an interview in General Motors for Android application developer. So good on you for getting the interview at General Motors. That's a big company. Excuse me. Sorry. And in my coding interview, they asked me all kinds of coding issues that related to algorithms. And I'm not sure how that algorithm relates to the development of Android apps. I want to give my take on when. I've given this talk before. When should I worry about data structures and algorithms? I'm going to give a very short version, which is to say the most important principle to understand in Seng, which is generally speaking the study of DS and algos. And Masum, you might already know this. My job here is to try and teach everybody a little bit, so don't be offended if I'm not saying you don't understand this, but let me just riff on this. The most important principle to understand in Seng, in my opinion, is a big, scary word called asymptotic runtime and space complexity. So I'm going to translate that for everybody because this is just a ludicrous bunch of jargon. Really what it comes down to is how big are your data sets, and they refer to this as italic N, generally speaking. If you've seen big O notation. How big are your data sets, and when is that a problem? And then the other, so that's like the space problem, and then how quickly does your program run, which would be like the runtime aspect. So from there we can kind of make some assertions. So I'm not sure how the I'm going to say like I'm not sure how these algorithms relate to the development of Android apps. So if your app has a large N, so for example, a social media company with millions/billions of users, then it is very important and relevant to understand the appropriate algorithms and data structures to manage large data sets. So again, N. And then as far as this other one, so knowing, depending on the app you are building, long-running operations or calculations can be improved, i.e. lead to a better user experience. Let me reread that sentence so I remember what I was saying. Depending on the app you're building, long-running operations or calculations can be improved by knowing, again, let's just copy-paste that, the appropriate algorithms and data structures. Let me give you a practical example. I love trotting this example out because it makes me feel special, but it is relevant to the question. So so this is a Sudoku application, and in order to solve the Sudoku puzzle, I have a whole bunch of algorithms in here, but I used graph data structures, a directed colored graph, and so I had to write these algorithms to manipulate a virtual Sudoku board represented as a graph data structure. And initially, in order to build 101 puzzles with the earliest version of the algorithm I wrote, it took 4 minutes and 3 seconds. It took a long time, not like a long time to do right. As I kept refining the algorithm or making it worse at times, eventually I got it to the point where I was able to generate 101 puzzles in 480 milliseconds. So this is to give you a practical example. By knowing how to manipulate data structures and algorithms and make them more efficient, which to me is the art of software engineering, I was able to greatly improve the user experience. So that's kind of just some, just sharing some thoughts on that particular topic. All right. Ravi Raj, or no, yeah, Ravi, I'm just going to call you Ravi, hopefully you don't mind. All right. So Ravi asks, thank you, Ryan, for answering my question. Here's the second one. Nowadays, a lot of F buzz happening on the cloud stuff. What is your thought on cloud technologies? Is this hype real or just temporary stuff? And also comparatively with Android, which is superior in terms of remote work opportunities. I'm going to leave that be because I feel like I already talked about remote. But here's an important thing to understand. As global high-speed internet becomes more accessible and faster, over time it will make less and less sense for parts of the application to exist on the device instead of the cloud. So this is a really important point. So what does that actually kind of mean? So At the moment, the reason why we're still doing a lot of native Android development and native iOS development, and you're seeing multi-platform solutions pop up, a lot of them web-based, is because at the moment, me interacting with my application, unless I have a very secure and high-speed internet connection with lots of bandwidth, if I push a button, the time it takes for my phone to process that interaction versus if I push a button and that immediately gets sent to a server, the time it takes there is, for most practical purposes, not comparable. Certainly it can be if you have a good internet connection. But for the majority of people, or I wouldn't say the majority, but for a lot of people, we don't always have a high-speed connection on our device. Let's assume that happens. So for example, Elon Musk is, one of my favorite people. He's trying to do that, setting up like global high-speed satellite internet. Other companies are trying to get to that. When that occurs, mark my words, this is me looking into the future, and I might be wrong, but as the bandwidth between, the difference between interacting with an application which sits on the device versus an application which sits on a remote device is reduced, as it becomes more comparable, these devices will more and more just be like, they'll just render the UI. They'll just have like a good GPU in it. And then eventually we won't have phones at all because these things are pretty clunky. And I mean, I don't have huge fingers. I've got like large fingers, and it's just really awkward typing on this thing. So over time, I do believe we'll less and less have more of an application. So if we want to talk in architectural layers, probably like the view model, maybe in the view will still be on here, but like everything else will probably be offloaded to a server. So I forgot what the question was. So the question was, nowadays there's a lot of buzz about cloud stuff. I think developers should learn and be aware of the changes. However, I also think that until that global high-speed internet thing becomes solved, or pretty close to being solved, we will continue to have a lot of native code, and devices you'll still have Android, you'll still have iOS and that kind of thing. But over time, I think they will start to meld together. I suspect what will happen is that most applications will be primarily browser-based. Now, you might think I'm like a web developer and I have a vested interest in that being the case. I actually really don't like JavaScript, so don't get me wrong. I'm not really necessarily happy that that's going to happen. That's just if I look into the future what I see happening. But I could be wrong. Okay. Oh, that sucks. Well, I guess I'm not using Hilt then. Or says, rather. By the way, I just want to give a shout out. I've done this a couple times already, but I know Gabor and Florian from Coding and Flow have recently created a course, a full-length course on, I think it was a lot of Android Jetpack best practices, paging, and I'm sure there's a bit of process death in there too. They've created a full-length course. I don't normally recommend courses because a lot of them suck, but I'm quite confident that if you want to learn Android Jetpack libraries like paging and that stuff, I don't use a lot of that stuff because I've become kind of like a build it yourself kind of, I've become that guy. I never thought that would happen. But if you do want to learn that stuff, navigation and all that, or actually I'm not sure if you guys use navigation in that, because I know Gabor has Simple Stack, but do consider checking it out. I just want to give a quick shout out there. And I'm not paid to say that. I just know that Gabor is a very good software developer, very good. And Florian is a great content creator and a good software developer too. So do consider checking that out. So Gabor says, my only personal problem with Hilt is that in a compose world, Hilt would only work if you use Jetpack Navigation and Jetpack View Model. Well, that means I'm not using Hilt because I don't use Jetpack Navigation and I don't use Jetpack View Model. So that's depressing, but maybe I could hack something together. This is interesting. Felipe. So, hi man, removing live data and lifecycle awareness from MVVM. Do you think that it is still better than MVP or other architectures that apply correctly solid and OOP? Oh dear God. Okay. It happened again. So this is a good question. Let me mention the first thing right off the bat here. This usually happens about once per live stream. There is no such thing as the best architecture, and it certainly isn't MVVM, even if there was. Now, people hearing this might hear me saying that MVVM isn't a good architecture. That's not what I'm saying. Not what I'm saying. There's no such thing as the best architecture. So every architecture design, and mark my words, this is basically like physics. This is a fundamental aspect of reality here. Every architectural decision you make will work better in some situations and worse in others. So let me illustrate this with a very simple example. MVVM is not one pattern. It has many sub-patterns. And you could argue that's the case as well with MVP. I think MVP is a little less ambiguous, but I don't use just MVP anymore. So, but let me stick to this point here. MVVM is not one pattern. It has many sub-patterns. Here are two of them. So, in one approach, the MVVM just exposes the data. So it just exposes a data model. In the other approach, sorry, that's supposed to be VM. In the other approach, the VM exposes a observable field. Excuse me, sorry. An observable field. So this could be a live data. I personally don't use live data, but it could be that. In the other approach, the VM exposes an observable field for each widget/state in a given view. Now, when you hear this, you might be tempted to say, Ryan, that's not MVVM. VMs are not allowed to depend on a view. Well, the important thing here, if you did think that, is I'm not actually saying that's what you're doing. You're in either case just exposing a field which the view observes. Now, why I bring this up is, so this approach prioritizes reusability of view models. This approach prioritizes removing presentation logic from the view. You don't get to have both at the same time. And I've written several articles on this, and this goes back to what I just said moments ago. Any architectural decision you make will work well in some situations and not well in others. And that is why there is no such thing as the best architecture. There can be a very good architecture for a specific app or a specific feature in an app. But there is no such thing as, like Don Felker says this. Don Felker says there's no silver bullet architecture. So, I just wanted to sort of touch on that because this is something a lot of people are confused about, and the Android team. Now let me look at the question again. So by and large, it's more important to correctly apply solid principles and object-oriented programming and functional design principles than following any particular architecture. Let me pull up my own architecture for a moment here, and I'll just explain what I do and how I arrived at that, and I'll try and go through it pretty quickly because I talk about this a lot. So in this application in Compose, I used this architecture. So my composables make up the view, and we'll do like code and thing. So my composables make up the view. They're given an event handler, and this is how I tell the logic class, which is like a presenter, this is that arrow there. So the view tells the logic class, hey, something happened, an event happened. And I use a single function which accepts a... actually, I'm not going to go into fine detail here. Let's keep this high level. The view talks to the presenter and tells it about click events and user interactions. The presenter will do whatever it needs to do. Maybe it writes some data to the backend first, and then it updates the view model. It doesn't really directly talk to the composables, but sometimes the presenter communicates with the container, which is secretly an activity. When I say secretly, I mean it's behind an interface. It'll update the view model, and then the view will be observing the view model. And an important point here, you do not need to use live data or whatever to do that. The way I've been doing that lately is my view model exposes these function types, which are nullable because I can't be guaranteed in knowing when they are null or not. It exposes these, and then whenever the view model state updates, it will invoke those functions. What actually ends up happening is that in the screen, which let's go to active game screen. What'll happen there is that, let's go to timer state. Once this function gets invoked, the data is observed. So that's our little eyeball arrow thing. That's what that means. It's an observable relationship. It's observed in the composable, and in Compose, you can use these remembered delegates to basically watch for changes in the slot space. It's technical, but it watches for changes in state. And the end result is that it will redraw your UI based on those changes in states. Now, I didn't figure this architecture out by learning from anybody else or copying anyone else. All I really did is I took the knowledge I already had about views, presenters, view models, my own particular bias, and my own understanding of the principles of software architecture which transcend all of these architectures: separation of concerns, loose coupling, that kind of thing, mainly those two. And I designed my own architecture simply by asking, what code makes sense to be put together, which is known as technically as cohesion, but I don't like to use big technical words. What code makes sense to be put together? What makes sense to be separated? So we can call that modularity. And no matter what I'm doing, I always loosely couple things. I don't have time to give a full lecture on software design. So probably I didn't answer your question directly, but I hope I gave you a whole bunch of things to think about. I'm just going to turn on my heater because I realized I turned it off by accident. Just one moment. Oh, that's not the... there we go. I unplugged it. It's getting warmer here in Canada, but it's still a little cold. Okay, sorry about that. We're back. Okay, here we go. So, Um, so Rahul asks, I'm working in another technology as a job and develop apps as my side business. One of my apps has 120K downloads. In the future, if I want to work as an Android dev, will company consider my portfolios of the app? Yeah, I think so. If you're applying to a company where they build applications, and what I mean by that is some Android developer jobs build like tools, or they're very focused in back end. What's an example? Like I once applied to this Android company where their whole business model is basically an analytics tracking tool, an API, which can be used. If you're applying to a company that builds applications, then I can't see how they wouldn't appreciate you having an application which is published and has a sizable user base. So I think that would be useful for you. All right. You're very welcome, Francisco. Oh, I'll have to. I don't know. Kobena asks, what are my thoughts on acceptance tests in Android? I deliberately try to be ignorant of testing jargon because it disgusts me. But let me look up what an acceptance test is, and I'll see if I've written it in code or not. I just don't remember jargon very well because it's just not a very natural way for me to think. So. Oh, my internet is getting crappy. It's taking forever to load. Oh, and I wrote acceptance instead of acceptance test. I'm sorry, Quabena. I'm gonna have to skip that question. My internet is taking forever to load. I don't remember off the top of my head what an acceptance test is. I know what a unit test is. I know what an instrument test is. I vaguely know what an integration test is. I don't remember off the top of my head what an acceptance test is and how it's differentiated. I don't really tend to focus much on the jargon. So my apologies, I can't really answer that. And well, I'll wait just a moment longer. Come on, internet. You can do this. Jesus. Wow. Okay, sorry, man. I'm literally just sitting here looking at Google, not doing anything after I hit acceptance test because I'm streaming. Apparently my bandwidth isn't great, so sorry. Let's see. Yeah, I'll definitely take a look, Gabor. I'll look at Simple Stack for sure, because I don't like the navigation library. There's some things in it that I like, but the library itself, like, yeah, let's all just do a bunch more XML configuration. That's cool. I love that. But there are some nice parts, like the deep links and safe args were cool, but not a huge fan of that library. I can try and riff on this. That's an old name. Hi there, I have a question. Is there any elegant way of implementing Firebase Snapshot Listener within the MVVM pattern? I mean, where should I keep the implementation of the Firebase listener? So what I did is I had a back end Firebase data source / entity, kind of, if you're into Uncle Bob stuff, behind an interface. And I used a extension function wrapper. I don't know if my internet is going to load to be able to show this to you. I showed somebody had a question about Firebase before. Oh, this is getting annoying. I'm sorry, I can't show you the code, but I had an extension function wrapper. So it basically, I don't remember off the top of my head what it looked like, but it was basically like fun await Firebase snapshot or something. And it was a, what was it, a suspend equals, I think, suspend coroutine. And so this is totally pseudocode. And then you have your asynchronous callback, and you use the suspend coroutine to manage that. And then that was like I think an extension function on task. So what I'm suggesting here, it wouldn't be very clean architecture to put that in the view model. Although I realize some people don't really care. If it's a smaller application, I guess you could put that in there. I personally wouldn't. I would put the implementation of the Firebase listener in a backend data source. The one thing I do have here is I would let's see. I would put it behind an interface like a repository. You don't have to do like the use case thing if you don't want to, and it's a smaller app. But I would put it in a backend thing. Give that backend thing your Firebase implementation. And then I found the suspend coroutine, which unfortunately I can't show you because my internet is not great right now. That's how I would handle that. Thank you, Felipe, for that. I really appreciate that. Very kind of you. So yeah. Probably not the best answer. Sorry, I didn't see your next comment there, Marcin, or Marchin. Directly on the view model, or should I rather pass live data to the repository from the view model? I don't think that a repository should know anything about the view model. You're right in that the repository shouldn't know anything about the view model. However, it's fine if the repository, I can't type, repository is given a live data / a callback of some kind. I don't actually use live data, so take that with a grain of salt. To publish, oh my god, I can't type. Publish data to. Yeah, so you wouldn't want like a line from the data IO. This is basically a repository. You don't want a line from your view model, from your repository to the view model, but there's different ways you can have the view model call back the data. So let me show you an example in this app here. I know it's not view model, but the same thing would apply. I have my, I'll make a call to my backend, and in each call to the backend, I use a function on success, a function type, and on error. And this is how my repository reports back to whatever's calling it that something went well or something went poorly, an error occurred. And if I need to send any arguments in, I can do it that way. There's benefits and drawbacks to using those function types. I ran into a situation where I think I probably will go back, to using either monads or result wrappers. But lately I've been using these function types, and I find that handy. And probably you could work out how this works, but what happens is that we pass those functions in, and depending on what happens in the back end, the repository will invoke either on success or on error if an error occurred. I'm not sure if that really helps you, Marcin. That's at least the French pronunciation of that name. But hopefully it gave you some ideas. WVS. So I'm going to assume you didn't. You're going to need to go back and watch. This episode will be available recorded on my channel. WBS says, do freshers need to know dependency injection? I would say any developer should understand what DI is trying to do. And you do not need a library. So to answer this really simply and quickly, you should understand why we give something the things that it uses. We give it to it, and so I'm not creating these different things in this class that uses those things. You should understand why we give it those things instead. I already explained that early in the episode. Like, I think the first question I talked about, I introduced the basics of dependency injection. Go back and watch the episode later, because I'm not going to give that lesson again. But to answer your question, to be honest, understanding what DI is and what it does is very simple. It's just that almost nobody can explain it simply, because people get confused between a DI framework like Dagger or Hilt or Coin, which is kind of complex. Sometimes it isn't, sometimes it is. And the principle of separating configuration from use, which is essentially what the purpose of dependency injection is. And conceptually, that's very simple. A thing that uses things should not also build those things, is really what we're doing here. Let's see. So Dolly Hamza asks, what is the best approach to make navigation with animation in Compose? I'll tell you what I've been doing. So I don't use the navigation component. My preferred way to handle transitions at the moment, and please understand, if you're watching this in the future, I'm still playing around a lot with Jetpack Compose, and it's still in beta, so don't take some ideas from it, take what's useful, and don't just copy paste it. What I have been doing is, so in my top level composable, I have a remembered transition state, which represents the different states for this particular screen. So loading, active means someone is actively solving a Sudoku puzzle. Complete means they have solved a Sudoku puzzle. So it's like a little enum there. I transition between these different things. So the view model updates the transition state. I set up these animation transitions. So here we're just animating a float value. And I needed to set up one for each of these different states. And then in the content composable, which is basically like just a box here, what I do is I have this when statement, which has the argument that is the transition state that gets updated. When it changes, this composable will recompose, which means it'll redraw. I'll go through this when statement again, and based on what has changed, so let's say we changed from loading to active, it will animate out the loading screen, and it'll animate in. So alpha is like a fade transition, transparency thing. And obviously you can get a lot more pretty and complicated with this. This is just pretty basic stuff here. Because I've set up these transition thingies, it'll perform that sort of smooth fade animation. Now, to be a bit more specific though, to transition between like fragments or just composables or activities, I haven't played around with that too much. I don't know how to do it in Android Jetpack Navigation, and I don't anticipate ever learning how to do it in that library because I'm not a fan of that library. Let's see, Gabor had some things to say. So Gabor has a library called SimpleStack, which is basically, as far as I'm aware, I haven't actually used it. I looked at it briefly. It's like a lighter weight, less annoying navigation library. And I'll just read. So at the moment, so Gabor says, not at the moment regarding SimpleStack and its animation capabilities. Not at the moment. It's an Android library. I need to make pure JVM variant. Oh my god, I'm so sorry, Dolly. Oh, sorry. I got a bit mixed up. Dolly asked Gabor if the SimpleStack works with Jetpack Compose, and Gabor says it's not ready yet, but it looks like he is working on it. He'll need to make a pure JVM variant for it to work on desktop. Okay. Hakeem says, dependency injection is simply being able to use late init without initializing it, in my opinion. That's an interesting opinion. Okay. Jumpo. Jumpo asks, when you're using Kotlin coroutines flow, do you even need live data in view model? No. No. And is stateflow just a new live data? No. In principle, kinda. So, how can I explain this? So flow and live data. Oh, it is a joke. Okay. I'm glad to hear that, Hakeem. Sorry, I must have missed the wink face, or I misinterpreted it. That is a funny joke. Okay, flow and live data, in principle, are publisher subscriber tools. Now, people are going to scream at me because they're going to say flow isn't just the publisher subscriber or observer pattern. And yes, you're right. This is one of the things it does. It's part of a collection of patterns. So flow and live data in principle are publisher subscriber tools. They're a way to achieve the publisher subscriber, also the observer pattern, which is basically, I talked about that earlier, just a way to draw an eyeball with an arrow to establish that observer pattern. Now, live data in particular has integration. So live data has hooks to the Android life cycle, whereas I haven't actually used flow yet, but I'm pretty sure I've used coroutines a lot. So whereas flow will likely have some kind of scopes, which are essentially a life cycle. You can think of scopes in a lot of different things as basically just being like a life cycle, essentially. I'm not talking about the Android life cycle, but coroutine scopes essentially are how we can give a life cycle to different components or data sources. So flow will likely have some kind of scopes which you can use Or you won't even need to, because a cool thing about coroutines is that in many cases they cancel themselves. It depends a little bit, but coroutines are really nice in that they do a certain amount of cancellation themselves. Whereas, like, for those of us who worked in RX Java, you had to have like a list of disposables and you had to dispose them and stuff like that. So going back to the question, when you're using Kotlin coroutines flow, do you even need live data in viewModel? Absolutely not. And I think they've already said that, for example, I think they've stated that single live data is going to be deprecated and is an anti-pattern to begin with. So basically what I'm saying, and even I think some of the Android framework, or sorry, platform developers / engineers are saying like, yeah, we're basically going to be moving to using flow over live data in many cases. I'm not saying they're going to get rid of live data entirely, but yeah. Hopefully that kind of answers your question. I don't think they're, someone said, so I wasn't saying they're deprecating live data. If I did, my mistake. They're deprecating single live data event or something. If I misspoke, I didn't mean to say they're deprecating live data soon, just one particular part of live data. All right. Yeah, single live data is quite special. Oh, Jacob asks a specific question here. Are you familiar with Google Calendar View with a list of reminders under each date? Was thinking that they did it with a recycler view inside. So Google Calendar View with a list of reminders under each date.
Opening calendar.
Oh, thank you, Google. Yeah, it definitely looks like a recycler view. Holy crap. Yeah, I would say it's definitely, it looks to me like a recycler view. Some good news, in Compose, you're going to be able to implement, once they figure out the, I think there's still some technical issues. I think it's still, I've heard it's a little bit laggy still. But once they sort out the technical issues, you're going to be able to write what is essentially a recycler view in like a fraction of the code. And they're going to make it easy to have like sticky headers and different kinds of items. So you're going to be able to do that thing much easier. I think like if this is what you're referring to, the Google Calendar app, that's just a nightmare to code that in recycler view. You can, it's just have fun with it. But that does look like a recycler view to me because I can scroll through it really quickly, and yeah, I would say it's probably that. All right. Oh, I'm not sure if I can give anything useful there. You're probably much better qualified than me, Gabor. How do you approach creating a library that works both in Compose and desktop? Oh crap! There's so many different variables here because like as you're building the library, you're going to need to be constantly updating it because Compose itself is changing, and that would be a nightmare to manage, as I'm sure you know better than I do. I don't know. There's nothing I can tell you, Gabor, because you've actually built a library. I've built a library before, but it was only for Android specific. So for other, I'm not going to be telling you anything you don't know, but just to share some thoughts for everyone watching. So the general approach would be build a sort of like a domain package with, or domain slash common, to share as much code between the different platforms. Probably, I don't know, but probably I would have. I don't normally like multi-module, but probably I would do something like a domain slash common module, and then like a compose Android module and a compose desktop module. Now, so I'd want to share as much as I could, although I don't want to go crazy with building a ton of modules because it's annoying. From there, let's see. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not really qualified to answer this question. So that's all I can give you. I do want to get into library building soon, though. I do actually have one that I hopefully will be able to work on soon for Android, but yeah, I don't really know. All right. Any other questions? Did I miss anything? I'd like to ramble for just a moment on this one. Hakeem comments, oh, sorry, that's not, that was a copy paste error. Hakeem mentions, do you think I should migrate? I know this question wasn't addressed to me, but I'd like to comment on it. I personally think it is fine to use live data, apart from like single live data event, excuse me, in the front end of an Android application. I don't, but I think it's fine. If you use it in your back end and you can replace it with just code generally use or flow, I would suggest gradually migrating that part. And the reason why is we just don't want to be like ludicrously tightly coupled to Android platform libraries when we really don't need to be. You can use Room with just coroutines. You can use Firebase with just coroutines. I think as far as I'm aware, the only backend library I'm aware of, which basically forces you to tightly couple your entire architecture to Android platform stuff, is the paging library. I personally don't use that one, but at the same time, maybe if I run into a situation where I have to write some ugly paging code, I might consider it. But yeah, the main thing is that the only real benefit, in my opinion, of using live data over like coroutines or Flow, which is built on top of coroutines, is the lifecycle awareness. So for that reason, I think it's fine to have it in the front end, but in the back end, it just causes this annoying tight coupling to the live data API that I just really don't like very much. So yeah. All right, the Apache. Oops, I screwed that order up. Do you have experience on platforms other than JVM? Android. So this is my main platform. I have done some Java. Let me just list it out. Early Java EE. So I used, like, for example, Tomcat as a servlet container, and I wrote a basic servlet and a basic web application. Hey, thank you, Hakeem. I appreciate that very much, my friend. Thanks, guys. Jeez, I feel loved. So, early Java EE. I've done Java desktop. So that's, obviously that's still JVM. I have done web dev with/without React. I've done a bit of low-level UI programming with C in Linux. That really taught me to appreciate how bloody complicated UI programming is and why I don't want to use libraries for anything. I don't want to use libraries for anything except UI programming, which is why you'll see my Android application has barely any third-party libraries, but I will definitely use Compose because holy crap, UI, low-level UI programming is a nightmare, but it teaches you to appreciate appreciate a lot of things. Let's see what else. What else have I done? I've played around with Python, Racket, Python and Racket. And I don't have too much else to tell you. So most of my experience is in JVM, primarily Android. I've done a little bit of work in Java EE, some stuff with Java Desktop as well. I played around with web applications, React/Node, but definitely not an expert there. And I'm just not a big fan of JavaScript. I prefer TypeScript for sure. I've done some low-level stuff, which was really fun and interesting to learn. And I played around with Python. True story, I learned Python in 30 minutes for a coding challenge. But unfortunately, the people I was trying to get hired by, even though it was an Android developer role, they wanted me to use Python, and they weren't impressed with the fact that I learned the basics of the language in 30 minutes, but I guess that doesn't matter. I definitely am, not the biggest fan of Python, but I also agree it's a cool language. And Racket, let's not even go there. So, yeah. Nothing very interesting there, I'm sure, but that's my answer anyways. Let's see. UDS, have I ever done a project with Arduino or something similar? I've been wanting to get into working with Arduino for literally a decade. More like 7 years, but no, I haven't had the chance. I live on a farm, and my dad owns the farm. He doesn't live here, so I basically just take care of it, which is very kind of him, but I have to do a lot of work. And we want to build solar panel arrays which have Arduino or something similar, microcomputer based, basically swivels, so that the like a motor, so that the solar panel articulates based on the position of the sun for maximum wattage power consumption. And then using Arduino for stuff like setting up a tech greenhouse where the there's fans and temperature sensors and pH sensors for the soil, and having like motorized windows so that if the temperature in the greenhouse gets too hot, then some windows open up, and all kinds of stuff like that. So I've been wanting to get into Arduino-based microcomputers and hardware type stuff for a lot of years, but it's I just haven't had time. I've been trying to become financially independent. I haven't watched any of Matt Perk's videos, but I love DIY. I'm gonna have to look this stuff up. um, Fang. Okay, so getting into Fang, so I'm seeing Fang refers to like Google. So get into Fang, prep a lot of leet code. So is leet code like an interview prep thing? So is leet code like an interview prep thing? Okay, I think I understand what this question is. Okay, I get it. So the question, I had to translate some of this stuff because I'm not up to speed. So, so what is your stance on people who basically do a whole bunch of work on like leet code and interview bit, and then try to get into working with one of these companies like it's the end goal in life? That's a very interesting question. So I think it really depends on what your value system and goals are in life. So before I became an independent programmer and content creator, which I am now and very thankful to be, I had a lot of jobs. Very few of those were in programming, but I had my first real job when I was 12 years old. I don't come from a rich family. I come from a lower middle class family. I had to get a job, and I grew up on a farm. So by the time I was 25, I had already spent over a decade working in kitchens, grocery stores, construction crews, sales floors, God knows what else, gas stations, farms. I am very to work a 9-to-5 job and to build other people's dreams. So I would be personally open to working at Facebook or Amazon or Apple. Well, not Apple, screw Apple. Netflix or Alphabet. Personally, I really would love to work for JetBrains. I would be open to working at one of those companies, but it would not be my end goal in life. It would be a chance to be financially secure and to develop my skills and hopefully work on something meaningful, which is why I would love to work at JetBrains. Google, yeah, I'd work for Google and Facebook if they paid me well enough. But yeah, the question was, what is my stance on people who think that's the end goal in life? I can't judge other people because it really depends on your value system. There's a lot of amazing, talented people who have gone to Google and they've stayed there the whole time, or they've gone, a person I know who she went to school, unlike I did, and she got an internship with Microsoft. Then she got hired at Google, and now she works in this amazing tech startup. It really just depends on what your goals are. I think it would be amazing to work at a lot of these companies, especially like if you've worked in some of the jobs that I've worked. Excuse me. But it would not be my end goal in life. I want to be independent. I could tolerate working at a company I liked, for sure, but there's so much more interesting to me in life than writing code for a living. And I know that might upset some of the people listening to this. I like writing code, but it is not the most important thing in my life. Teaching people, having relationships with my friends or my partner, farming. I have so much interesting stuff going on with my life that, that's really just not my end goal. That's a rambly answer, but a good question. And I'm curious to hear what other people think. Let's see here. So yeah, in a nutshell, it depends on your value system. I mean, hey, would you rather work at a FANG place or a gas station for the rest of your life? Some people would actually work at a gas station, and it just depends on your value system. Nobody asks, let me just fix that. Apache asks, so before programming /Android, what was your job? Oh, shoot. I'm going to link a video. I'm only going to show a moment of this, and I'll link the video. This is what I did. This was my last job. I wasn't here, but I worked in a serious kitchen. And you guys, you know what? A lot of people think their programming jobs are stressful, and I'm sure in certain situations it probably is, but after you've worked in a serious, busy kitchen, there is nothing I will ever do as a programmer which will ever come close to the stress and pressure of working in a busy kitchen, because the standards of quality you must achieve, otherwise you'll get screamed at, and the margins, the deadlines, the time management, the resource management necessary to work in a very busy, serious kitchen, it's unreal. It is the pressure you have to go through. It's insane. It will make you a much tougher human being. So to answer your question, I was a line cook, / banquets cook. And me and my sous chef, Jeremy was his name, is his name, would often serve 100 people, cook for 100-person banquets, and cook something like a 40 to 60 cook for 40 to 60 people a la carte, which means off the menu, in the span of 3 hours, because that's how long dinner service was. And Jeremy, my sous chef, the last one I worked for, this guy is a walking meme. He threatened to kick the shit out of me because I dropped too many fries in a fryer. And if you've ever worked in a kitchen, over-dropping fries is like just not a big mistake. So if you've ever watched Hell's Kitchen with Gordon Ramsay, that's the last job I did. And I worked with a guy who was a lot like the evil Gordon Ramsay. It's incredible. It takes me back to a very special time in my life. Hopefully that is useful. Abhijit asks, what is your view on machine learning in upcoming days? Ask me that in a year, because I really want to get into it, but I'm not qualified to answer that. All right, we're doing this AMA style. So Jacob says, comments, if you said you were a drug dealer before, it wouldn't surprise me. You've got the street smarts for it. In the last apartment I lived in the city, there were 2 drug dealers. One of them was a meth dealer, and one of them, I hope I don't get demonetized for talking about this. And I am not a drug addict, and I do not encourage people to take hard drugs. But just as a story, the last apartment I lived in, there was a meth dealer and probably just a really high-level weed dealer in the same floor as the place I lived on. And there was a lot of drug addicts. I had like meth addicts trying to break into my apartment pretty frequently. When you talk about street smarts, when you live in like the worst neighborhoods in a city, it teaches you how to survive and how to comport yourself in those sorts of situations. And the truth about living next to drug dealers is that as long as you're nice to them and you don't get into their business, they'll leave you alone because they don't want to bring any heat in. They don't want to cause any problems, because if they caused a problem with me and I called the cops, they could get into trouble. So, fair statement. Jacob says, if I said I was a drug dealer, it wouldn't surprise me. I have never sold drugs, but growing up in a, lower middle class income bracket, I had a lot of friends who sold drugs. And I'm not encouraging this, but actual true story. A friend of mine, when he was 14, he made $10,000 in cash, tax-free, over a summer selling marijuana. This 14-year-old he literally had a tanning bed in his room, probably paid for in cash. I'm not encouraging anyone to sell drugs. I'm telling a personal anecdote about what it was like growing up for me. So, glorify anything. I just wanted to share some stories from my background. But yeah, true story. Anyways. Thank you for asking me something outside of just programming stuff, because I've got some cool stories. I've had quite a life. Anyways. Okay, how long have I been rambling for? Almost 2 hours. I think the questions are slowing down. I'll stick around if there's any more questions, but I'll stick around, but let me just give the announcements one more time for people who are still watching. So I just want to remind everybody of a couple things. So I will be away from March 22nd to April 2nd, which means that I won't be live streaming next Sunday, but I will be back on the 4th of April, which is a Sunday. While I'm gone, I am going to be working on a curriculum and video plans for a Android Kotlin Compose course. It will mostly be front end because I've already done so much stuff on back end stuff and software architecture that I don't feel like I need to cover that as much. And also, when I come back, I'm going to be reaching out to some people if they would like to join me for a live stream Q&A or an interview type thingy. Just depends on what people are interested and who is interested. So I'd just like everyone to keep that in mind. And do we have any more call it a day, or is everyone basically tired? Which is okay, I'm getting there myself. Well, I see we still have 14-ish viewers. Yes, I do actually, Quabena. Quabena asks, do you have any experience using either Java 11 or Java 12 on Android? I do have a little bit of experience with that. So, not sure what that comment was about. Anyways, sorry, let's see. Let me see if I can find a project where I do that. You know, I'll off the top of my head. So yes, Kobena, I do have experience using Java 11 on Android. So in more recent, just 1 second. Oh, lovely. Let's just. Okay. Just need to do a little housekeeping. Hey, what's Vivek? Thank you for joining me, Vivek. Okay, sorry, just needed to do a bit of housekeeping there. So, do you have any experience using Java 11? In more recent versions of the, I think the Gradle build tool, you could use Java 8 plus, including some Java 11 features if you configured it. From Java 8 and stuff, I used, they call it function references, I believe. Is that correct? Something like that. No, method references. So I used method references. I used their optional and obviously lambda expressions, although their lambdas were annoying. The lambdas in Java, if I recall, the ones I could use, you could only use a lambda if the anonymous class only had a single callback. So I couldn't use them very much, but I did use that, and let me tell you, it makes Java a lot nicer. Let's see. Zawinda mentions, does the tooling even support that? I don't think so. So let me see if I can pull up the article, if my stuff will load here. Android Java interoperability. No, Android Java 8. So it was in this article here. So you could get some language features higher than Java 8. I'm not actually sure 100% if they're like from 11 or what they're from, but they did somewhat recently in Gradle 4.0 sort of improve things. So you could use some of the newer Java stuff. I don't know off the top of my head if these things are from like Java 11 or what, but certainly 8 plus. And all you have to do is do some basic configurations there. Okay. So Jacob asks, after working on writing APIs and some light backend automation, Android frontend stuff just takes so much more time. Is the future going to be no code? I have no idea. I just wanted to paste this question to completely agree that, to be perfectly honest, over time, I want to just not do a whole lot of front-end stuff anymore. Because after working on more software engineering and improving my knowledge base there, I'm working on more lower level projects. While I love Jetpack Compose, I just don't really enjoy doing front-end coding. And when I say that, I mean like very front-end and designs and stuff like that, as much as I actually enjoy doing other things. So if the future is some kind of no-code solution, that would be cool. It would be great if we could get, machine learning algorithms to do that kind of stuff. I would be very, very happy. So, yeah. John asks, let's see here. Did you create the matrix? Yes, I am the architect Or maybe I am Smith. Mr. Anderson, welcome back. Yeah, I have no idea where I mean, I could answer that question, but before I do, you'd have to either take the red pill or the blue pill. And so what I'll do is I'll Amazon the pills to you, and you can make that decision, and then let me know which one you pick, and then I will decide whether to answer this question about whether I created the matrix or not. Interesting question, though. All right. What's up, Vasily? Hi, Ren. I am late. I saw you told that single live event is an anti-pattern, but what are you using instead of that? So it depends on the context. The classic answer, it depends. Let me put it this way. I'll use one of two things. If I am worried about threading, bearing in mind that coroutines are not equivalent to threads, although often coroutines will use other threads under the hood, but coroutines don't need other threads. If I'm worried about threading, I will just use coroutines plus scopes, coroutine scopes, which is essentially a replacement for the lifecycle support, that live data or single live event uses. If I need a quick and simple observer pattern for one or several events, not so much like a flow of events. If there's like a high volume of events, I wouldn't use this. I will just use a function type. So to give a code example here, what is an example? Let's go to active game. No, a new game view model. And we'll do new game screen. So there's not a lot going on here. Basically what happens is that we have this loading state Boolean, and it starts out true. And in the composable for that, it also defaults to true. So basically what this means is that while this variable is true, then we will display the loading screen. And then once the data is loaded, there's data from a statistics backend thing and data from a settings backend. Once that data is loaded, then I update this to false or whatever. Generally speaking, this thing only gets called like once or twice, so it's like a single live event. So what I do for this is I set up a function type, and I make it nullable because from the perspective of this view model, I don't necessarily know if something's listening. So that's why I use the nullable operator there. So it just publishes the event, and if anything happens to be listening, great. Now, an important note here, this works because I only have one single observer. If I had multiple observers, I couldn't get away with just using this. I'd have to have like a list of these function types. And at that point, I'm basically implementing the observer pattern in a functional style, which is, if that's necessary, that's fine. So I forgot what the question was, replacing live single event. So I have this set up here where I set up this function type, and then how I actually bind to that is I'll I'll say viewModel.subLoadingState, which is this variable, equals, I'll supply a lambda, for example, in the composable, but it doesn't have to be, which becomes this reference. So then when we invoke it, then whatever we invoke pops up in our lambda here, the change in state. So this is basically how I handle that kind of thing. The cool thing about coroutines is that generally speaking, when you shut things down, it'll cancel it for you. I don't have time to go into the specific details of that. And whenever you have a situation where that doesn't work, you can set up your coroutine scopes to handle that for you. And that sort of replaces the integration with lifecycle that you get with like the live event stuff. So hopefully that helps and answers your question somewhat. And there is Marco Pierre White. Hey, really cool little thing. In this video, you get to see a young Gordon Ramsay in the background. Let's just see if we can see him. Oh, there he is. He's there. This is when someone's getting crap because they did something wrong. Then the chef calls you over and says, do it like this. Come on, let's... Oh, there we go. Close-up of young Gordon Ramsay. Now, the funny thing about young Gordon Ramsay is he still looks like he's 50 because he still has all the wrinkles. Okay, I'll shut up now on that. Okay. Oh, I love these questions. Cool. I love behavioral questions. Pratik asks, one interviewer asked me a behavior question. If you're a team lead with the team size is of 5 people, 2 of them are performing 30% and you need to deliver the product in a month. Management doesn't care. Okay. 2 of them are performing... okay. I'm not sure I understand this second part. Perhaps you could clarify. So 2 of them are performing at 30% relative to the other people. So you've got a 5-person team. 2 of them are performing quite poorly. Is that what I'm reading here? And I need to deliver a product. I don't actually have enough info to answer that question, but it sounds interesting. I'll see if you can get back to me on that. Jacob comments, I really enjoy your streams and have a blast listening in. Thank you. I'm really glad to hear that. The only problem is some of my friends also tune in later or during, and when they see my questions, they make fun of me. Well, tell your friends to... I shouldn't swear. I don't think I can help you with that. Find better friends. All right. Oh, that's a tricky question. James Alexander says, hi Ryan, how to make an effective image caching in case you have a very long recycler view? Yeah, it's tricky. It's been a while since I did that. There's a lot of stuff. Firstly, I think you'd probably want to, ideally you would be loading the images from like a really fast web hosting thing. Like I know Firebase provides a service for that, because processing the images or bitmaps, it's really easy to do that with Glide. Of course, Glide has the convenient callbacks so that you can display a loading screen until the image loads. And then, I don't know. It's tough because there's a lot of different things to cover with that question. And it's been a while since I wrote a recycler view, which was very image heavy. But I remember I used Glide, and I loaded the images from a REST API instead of obviously having them on the device storage, which doesn't really make sense anyways. And if possible, you would want to, load and cache. And that would be tricky. You would have to have like a back-end component which is doing that. And then you would have to be, I'm not even sure, you might need to have Glide in the backend as well. That's a complicated and difficult question. I don't have a great answer for you. Sorry. All right, I'll just do a few more questions here. Techno asks, should I switch from Java to Kotlin? So it depends on your priorities. So, does your workplace or places you want to work for use Java or Kotlin, or both? Are you interested in writing 40 to 60% less code? If so, learn Kotlin. And to give some background here, so I have been working with Java since 2013. I am very good with Java, and Kotlin is basically what Java should be. So if it makes sense for your personal goals, your academic goals, your professional goals. Sorry, just double checking to make sure my heater was on because it's bloody cold in here. If it makes sense to for your goals, I think you should switch to it. But the one reason why I would be hesitant, if you work at a company that has a lot of legacy code or just Java code in general, or you're trying to get hired by some companies which don't use Kotlin, and generally speaking, you can find that out by looking at the job postings, that would be a reason why you might want to stick with Java. But while I think it's a good idea to learn the basics of Java and then move into Kotlin, at the same time, the cost of doing that is that you'll learn a bunch of bad habits, and initially you'll basically be writing Java code in Kotlin and not taking full advantage of the Kotlin programming language. But over time, that'll get better and better. So I don't have a yes or no answer for you, but Kotlin is an amazing programming language. And it really does feel like modern Java. It's pretty much everything I like about Java, largely the JVM, in a modern and awesome programming language. So, okay, I'm going to be picky now because I'm getting kind of tired, but let me just see. All right. Yeah, sorry, Vasily, I couldn't give you a good answer there. Okay, so Pratik says 2 of them are performing at 30%. So I'm gonna try and answer this question. I'm just gonna assume I know what you mean. So they're performing at 30% of what they could be doing. Let's just kind of add that in, and I'll go from there. So Pratik asks, one of the interviewers asked me a behavioral question. If you're a team lead and the size of the team is 5 people, 2 of them are performing 30% of what they could be doing, and you need to deliver the product in a month. Management doesn't care. So there's a couple things I would do. So the first thing is I want to understand why these 2 team members are not performing at close to 100%. Now, the thing is, the way I would do this, I wouldn't come in there from an aggressive, accusatory mode and say, what the hell, guys, we've got a product launch in a math, and you guys are working at 30%. That's not how you solve those problems. So the first thing I would do is I would have a meeting with these two team members, and I would ask them kindly, basically, so I've been noticing lately that your productivity hasn't been what it used to be, and I'm just concerned if you guys or girls or whatever, guys is a gender neutral term, if you guys are not getting the support you need, and I would want them to, I would ask a very general thing, and I would give them the opportunity to explain what's going on. Maybe they're both having horrible problems at home. Like maybe they had a death in the family, they broke up with their girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever. So the most important thing is you have to understand you're working with human beings, and we're working a job, and unlike some team leaders, and I've been a team leader before, I don't actually expect my team to have their whole life revolve around what's going on in their work. I expect a certain baseline, and that's basically it. So I would want to understand, why are they not performing at 30%? If I could negotiate with them or give them some kind of support to increase their productivity, I would do that. If the case is that that they're at 30% and there's nothing I can do, and I have a month to launch a product, where I would move into from there is I would, in my own time, think of a plan to best distribute the resources I have. So I've got 3 team members who are doing well, and I would obviously look at the different tasks, and I would set them on the most important or most difficult tasks, and I would show a lot of appreciation for those team members. And if one of those team members came up to me and said, hey, I feel like I'm doing a lot of the work here, why is this the case that these other people are working on this easier stuff? Then I would promise and explain to those team members or that team member, listen, we have a situation where we've got to get this product launch, and I understand I'm putting you in a situation where I'm asking you to do more than other people. If you're not comfortable with that, let me know and we can work around with it. If you will work with me for this product launch, I can guarantee you that the extra effort you're putting in will be rewarded in some way. And then as far as like the tech crunch, so we've got a month to deliver the product, I personally try to lead from the front. So while I do think that in order to be an effective team leader, you need to delegate. You can't do everything yourself. You need to use your team members, because a lot of times you'll have team members who are more specialized than you, more efficient than you, and then you have all those things you need to do as the team leader to coordinate everybody. However, I do not think that a good team leader should be ignorant or incapable of getting in and writing some good code, especially if you're a lead software developer. So basically what I'm saying here is I would try to balance the resources I have, take as much responsibility as I could in order to account for the slack, but also recognizing that the most important thing for me to do is to manage the human resources and to make sure everyone's on the same page. I wouldn't, during that period, be aggressive or accusatory with the team members who are performing at such a low level. However, once the product launch is done, I probably would sit them down and explain to them, I would ask them what exactly they're looking for in this job and what's going on. They wouldn't have to go into detail in their personal lives to lead to this, because there is a certain standard that I would expect from people. I wouldn't expect them to you know, devote their entire life to their work. So that's a very long answer, but that's basically how I would approach that situation. So in general, show compassion to the people who are performing at 30%. Make sure the people who are performing well get rewarded for it. Do what I can to take up the slack, but also at the same time maximize the human resources that I do have, because at the end of the day, I have to deliver the product. So that's basically it. Okay. Does everyone have the... I can share the Slack link if people want. Just give me a moment. What the hell is going on? Oh, there we go. Launch Slack. Sorry, my launch Slack button on my browser was missing for a second. I'm just grabbing the Slack invite link. Okay, how do I do this? Okay, I'm just going to paste in the Slack invite link, so you can click on that if you want to join. Just understand, like, I don't tolerate a lot of nonsense, and don't come to my Slack channel just to advertise your stuff. A bit of advertising is okay, and you can share learning resources, but don't use my Slack channel, our Slack channel, as a spam factory, because that's what those Android Facebook groups are for. Okay. Let's see. I'm just going to have a look at the final little questions here and comments, and I'll probably call it a day shortly. Let me just catch up. We also have a Discord channel, but I'm not really on there very much because I went to the trouble of setting up a Discord and then barely anyone ever participated. So, yeah. Way2 asks, am I going to make more courses on Kotlin? Yes, I am planning a Kotlin Android Compose course. How can I update my app in real time without using Firebase? Jose, I'd need to have more context to answer that question. I'm glad that was useful, Pratik. Rohit asks, what is the best way to learn custom views and animation? Dive in. Let's see. Honestly, my approach. Привет. My Cyrillic is getting a bit rusty, but I'm gonna have to. I'm gonna be learning Cyrillic and Russian again, so perhaps one day we'll be able to communicate in your mother tongue, Stan. All right. Oh wow, that didn't work so well. There we go. What is the best way to learn custom views and animation? The way I learned was to find some open source projects which used come on brain, you can do this, custom views and animations. So a great one is Plaid app by Nick Butcher, who's on the Android team, and played around a whole bunch. Привет. Привет, братан. Sorry, I'm trying to speak Russian. Okay. Извините, где получит? Папа, это не мой мотор. Okay, I'll shut up now. So yeah, the way I learned was to just find some open source projects and custom views, and I just wrote code. I found a lot of documentation just not that useful, because the Android animations, there's so many different APIs for Android animations. Luckily in Compose, they've really shrunk it down, so it's confusing and annoying. And as far as custom views, for that, you have to play around with subclassing view and just making, I had to just play around with it, basically. I don't have a great answer for you, but that's really what I focused on to learn that. Anyways, Hosea, so let's say I have a REST backend and service developed and the type is event stream. And when something is created on the back end, I want to show the update directly in my app. So I'm going to assume you would know how to communicate from the back end to the front end. This would be the kind of thing where probably you would want to use like flow or channels. So I don't have a lot of experience with either of these, but I would probably use a channel. And so what you would do is you would have a channel which is constantly listening for traffic. Off the top of my head, I don't know how easy that would be to do, to set up the event stream between the backend service and the channel. But yeah, you'd probably have to have some kind of a what do you call that? A stream, a data stream, HTTP stream between the REST backend and the your Android backend, and you'd probably want to use a channel to basically be constantly listening, and then you'll have the front end of your app listening to that channel, and then using like Compose or whatever. Compose would be great for this, actually. You could just basically update your view model with the new data, and then your view will be listening to the view model, and then it would update the user interface sort of automatically. So that would be in principle how I would approach it, but I can't say that I've done that. So yeah, take that with a grain of salt. Thanks for stopping by. All right. Hopefully that's useful. Yeah. Okay, people. I think I'm gonna pretty much call it at this point. I have to use the restroom, as we say here in Canada, which is another way of saying I have to race like a piss horse. I mean, piss like a racehorse, which is another expression we use here in Canada. So, I'll just stick around for a moment for final comments. I would just like to thank everybody here and everyone who's been showing me a lot of love on Twitter lately and stuff like that. A little while ago, I kind of complained publicly on Twitter that I really suck at multitasking and SEO and web presence and stuff like that. And the reason why is just I'm not very good at multitasking. I'm not good at being a content creator and learning to code and an app product developer and a SEO person and interacting with the community all at the same time. I do my best, but I'm just not. I'm a very one-track, obsessive-minded person. So I've been doing my best to do well on those things, but I've been given just a whole bunch of support and kind words from people lately, on Twitter in particular. I mean, the Apache, Vivek, there's too many different people to name here, but I really appreciate all the support I've been getting. I don't really care anymore. Like, it used to kind of bug me that I would spend sometimes, 10 hours making a video, and then it would get like, I don't know, 100 views. At this point, even though I still, the YouTube algorithm is still my arch nemesis, I'm actually okay because it's just night nice for it's nice to be recognized from good developers in the community, and to hear that my content doesn't suck. That means a lot to me. So thank you so much for all the support. I would like to just wish you all a happy Sunday. I will see you all hopefully on April 4th for the next live stream Q&A. And yeah, thank you for watching, and I hope you all have a good end of your Sunday. Peace out, cousins.